treasure of divine love, and he was filled with compassion and mercy. Where is such a personality as Srinivasacharya gone?
Where was Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatana? Where is Jaganath, the Savior of the fallen?
Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopala Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraja? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, somebody go?
I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities?
Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps.
Today is the disappearance day of Rasikananda and Jaganath Das Babaji. So a lot of you probably haven't heard much about Rasikananda. So Rasikananda, I'm going to just speak on this. And he was sent by Lord Chaitanya from the spiritual world to appear in the land of Utkala. I don't know whether you know the land of Utkala is situated in West Bengal in eastern India. And as you see that in eastern India, you have Jagannath Puri and Mayapur and these places. So he appeared in the 15th century. And actually it is said at that time, historically, at that time, the land of Utkala was inhabited by very irreligious, degraded, sinful people who mistreated sadhus, mistreated brahmanas, sannyasis, often even killing them and robbing them. Also the kings and the government, ministers and members of the higher caste, extremely corrupt, engaged in, it is said, just sinful activities, of the worst kind. Even amongst the general mass of people, people would just kill each other, just even for trifling amounts of money. It was a terrible place. These people were just inhabited by all these really, and such degraded persons would, even if they saw a kirtan performers, they would attack them, even push Vaishnavas out of their homes and drive them into the wilderness. So this was very, very disturbing, the whole atmosphere of Utkala, the whole land of Utkala. Very disturbing atmosphere there. And the devotees that lived there, who resided there, were just constantly praying to the Lord to help them. They were praying, please send us one of your empowered representatives who can liberate this land of Utkala. Thus, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the spiritual world, he sent Rasikananda. And actually, his transcendental appearance was predicted by the Vedic astrologers. So everyone knew that he was coming, and they were just praying to the Lord for his arrival. So in 1590, Rasika took his birth. So we note that this is like 56 years after the disappearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Actually, it is said that his mother and father, Rasika's mother and father, they performed austerities for many lifetimes to be blessed with a saintly child. And according to the Vedic astrologers, the time of his birth was just highly auspicious, and it was predicted that this child had descended to dispel the ignorance of the land of Utkala. Thus everyone began to bless the baby and glorify the parents. And of course, when he appeared, everyone recognized, acknowledged that he's not an ordinary child. No, he was just extremely beautiful. And his effulgence, it is said, it just illuminated the entire house. And his beautiful face, his sweet laughter just captivated the hearts of one and all. And even as a young baby, whenever the name of Krishna would enter the baby's ear, he began to just cry emotionally. And tears would just flow from his eyes. So, citizens and people from far and wide, they came, they heard about him. His appearance it was started to be known, and people just came from far and wide to see him, to witness this incredibly beautiful child. And at his name-giving ceremony, he was given the name Rasika. And at the first grain ceremony, he eagerly picked up the Srimad Bhagavatam and he held it tightly to his chest and he began crying, displaying all ecstatic symptoms. So, as a young boy, he was just as a young boy, a few years old, he would wander throughout the villages with his friends, performing Sankirtan. And he would take the dust from the feet of anyone who chanted the holy name. And he would bow down. If he saw any Vaishnava or Brahmana, he would immediately bow down. And because he was the son of a king, people would invite him into their homes and offer him gifts and sweets, and he would take those sweets. He was just a little boy. I can tell those guys just if they could stop the thing till after class. Tell them they're having a class in here. Just tell them if they could. They probably don't even know. But he would take those sweets as a young boy and he'd place them around the tulsi plants. And he'd offer that food to Krishna, and then he'd distribute that food to all his friends and all the local people and householders. And when he was traveling around, visiting different households, if he saw a tulsi plant that wasn't being looked after properly, he would clean it, smear it with cow dung, and teach people. He was just a young boy, but he used to teach people you have to respect tulsi and respect sacred places and items. And as a young boy, he loved to serve the cows. He would feed them grass from his own hands and bring them water. And unlike other children, Rasika, he didn't waste time playing games. Rather, he would be busily chanting. He was chanting like 58 rounds a day as a young boy. And he refused to eat any food till he completed his chanting, his daily chanting. And he would enjoy hearing Srimad Bhagavatam recitals about the pastimes of Krishna. And he would engage his friends in performing dramas depicting Krishna's transcendental pastimes. He would dress them up in costumes. And of course, when he began his schooling, like many of the Vaishnavacharyas, he astounded his teachers by mastering his studies in a very short time. And later he mastered the 6 Vedic philosophies, and he wrote his own commentary on each verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, revealing the inner meaning of each verse of the Bhagavatam. Thus, he was just declared by all the teachers and scholars to be a genius of a child. And as days passed, Rasika he actually grew into a great scholar who was undefeated in argument. Many reputed scholars found him just no match for them. Day by day, it also was seen that his love for Krishna just grew and grew. And his father, he was a bit concerned about this child, because he had no interest in material life. He was just simply floating in love for Krishna. And sometimes he would just wander in the forest for days and days, not eating or drinking any food, not sleeping. And he'd be just calling out to Krishna, crying, rolling on the ground. Because his father was they used to come and find him there in the forest and bring him home. And people were his father was really worried about him, and he thought, we've got to try and bring him back to the normal way of life. So they thought, we should arrange his marriage. So soon he was married to this very special, beautiful princess. And she was also a great devotee of Krishna, actually. And actually it is said that she was actually an eternal consort of Rasikananda. And actually they had one daughter and 9 sons. Actually, the first 6 sons died for some reason, for Krishna's arrangement or something. And the other 3 sons and the daughter, they were like great devotees of the Lord that helped push on the Sankirtan movement throughout the land of Utkala. Of course, after Rasika's marriage, it was like he was living the life of a householder, but he had no really interest in it. He was just floating in this love for Krishna, exhibiting all these ecstatic symptoms. And one day while meditating in the deep forest, Krishna came to him. And he was just, when he saw Krishna, he just was just like, exhibiting all these ecstatic symptoms of crying and falling on the ground. And Krishna instructed him that you must take shelter of Shamananda. And Shamananda, he was one of the 3 best students of Jiva Goswami, and he became a great Vaishnava Acharya, very exalted Acharya of the Lord. And so the Lord told Rasika, you should take shelter of Shamananda. And then the Lord appeared before Shamananda and instructed him that you should travel to the land of Utkala, meet my favorite devotee, Rasika. And after initiating him, you should go and preach and to deliver the inhabitants of Utkala, the land of Utkala in West Bengal. So soon Shamananda left Vrindavan. He met up with Rasika. They spent many, many days discussing Krishna Katha, performing Sankirtan. And then Rasika and his wife, Isha, they were both initiated by Shamananda. And then Rasikananda and his wife, she was initiated Shamadasi Takarani. They remained in Utkala, and they would just very humbly just serve the Vaishnavas and Brahmanas there. And they would just humbly just wash their feet and drink that water. They would collect all their plates after they'd been eating and eat their remnants, because eating the remnants of the Vaishnavas is very auspicious for our spiritual advancement. So, when Rasika's royal family witnessed this, they really came before him. They chastised him, criticized him, saying, you're bringing ill name to our family. This behavior is not the behavior of a member of the royal family. Thus, Rasika, he became very angry, and he left that place, and him and his wife, they went into the forest, and they started living in the forest. And then later they moved to a village ruled by his elder pious brother, and they built a house there. And soon Shamananda came, his guru, and together they planned how we're going to deliver the people of Utkala, these sinful people who were so fallen and so wretched. And they would plan, they would go from home to home, they would go from village to village, from town to town, and they would induce people to take up this chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, this Hari Nam. And it wasn't long before Rasika, he started initiating many, many disciples. People came in, like whole groups of people came to take initiation from him. It was just like a modern version of Rasika would be like Jaganath Maharaj. Sometimes he goes in and initiates a whole village. It's this unlimited mercy. So he would just be, whole groups of people were coming, initiating him. He had thousands of disciples. And due to his transcendental preaching efforts, it is said that whole cities became transformed into Vrindavan, where people were just floating in love for Krishna through chanting his holy name. And he used to hold public debates, and he would invite scholars, big scholars, to come, and he would refute all their statements, and he would just be using very strong preaching based on the teachings of Srila Vyasadeva and Srimad Bhagavatam. And, no one could defeat him. And the result of he had incredible intelligence and high knowledge that, when people heard him speak, the result was all the audiences, the scholars, everyone involved, they all surrendered to Rasika and became dedicated, pure Vaishnavas. No one could match his intelligence. He could speak even in many languages and debate all philosophical points and theories. What he did is he established beyond any shadow of a doubt that the essence of all religion is the worship of Krishna. And unless one dedicates himself to Krishna, one cannot attain liberation from this cycle of birth and death, regardless of how great a scholar one may be. In this way, we see Shamananda and Rasika, they traveled around and they would hold these big festivals, inviting huge crowds of people. They would speak Krishna Katha, they would get everyone chanting the holy name, beautiful kirtans, and they would get all the local children. And they would organize these incredible dramas, which were just depicting Krishna's pastimes, which just enchanted one and all with the message of devotion to Krishna. So, Rasika, he also he performed many mystical activities as well. Like just one night he was returning home and was bitten by this very venomous snake. Most people would just die within a short time. However, that snake died that night. And the next day, Rasika was seen singing and dancing in a joyful mood, just totally unaffected by the bite of this venomous snake. Then one day, another incident took place. One day, there was this wicked Yavana king. He was envious of Rasika's popularity. And before his assembly, he started deriding Rasika, saying, he's just a fake. He's just an imposter. He just has a little mystic power that he's just enthralling people, bewildering people. And just at that time, what happened this wild, mad elephant entered the town. And this elephant was just huge. And it began destroying houses, killing people, killing domestic animals. It was just running amok in this town. And everyone was just terrified. Everyone was running for their life. So that envious king, he petitioned Rasika. He said, call Rasika here. We'll test and show that he's a fake, an imposter. Rasika came. And then this envious, wicked Yavana king, he said, if you are genuine, then you make this elephant your disciple, this mad elephant, which he thought a seemingly impossible task. How can you? Of course, everyone forbade Rasika to go because he thought, this elephant's just going to kill him. But Rasika was just unperturbed. He just came before that ferocious elephant, and then he looked into his eyes, and he began chastising him. Why are you going here and there, causing all this disturbance and trouble to people? Then he started preaching to him, telling him, you're actually an eternal servant of Krishna. Because of your karma, you've taken birth in this elephant body. Soon the elephant became completely pacified and fell down at Rasika's feet and just washed his feet with the elephant washed his feet with his tears. Then Rasika, he placed his hand on the elephant's head and he chanted the Hare Krishna mantra into his ear, and thus initiated him, and he called him Gopal Das. The elephant Gopal Das. And this elephant, he got up, he circumambulated Rasika, and then he just fell down flat, prostrated himself at Rasika's feet, and just cried tears of joy. He didn't want to leave Rasika's association there. Now it was only after a long time the elephant was able to leave his guru's company and return to his home in the forest. And actually later on, that elephant Gopal, he went on holy pilgrimage, visiting many holy places, and he could be seen chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. And actually he performed many services during that time to the devotees and to Rasika. Actually, it is said that he performed great penances in his previous life to get blessed by Rasika in this life. And there was also many other occasions where Rasika performed mystical feats. It's like once they were traveling through the forest and they got lost. He was there with a group of his disciples. Suddenly there was 2 ferocious tigers standing in the path, ready to just pounce on some of the disciples. Rasika just came before those 2 tigers, and once again he looked into their eyes and he began chastising them. Why do you want to attack us? He said, just because of your karma, you've taken this birth. And he just started preaching to these 2 tigers, and these 2 tigers, they became completely pacified, and also they fell at the feet of Rasika and started crying. And actually they performed the service of leading Rasika and his disciples out of this forest where they were lost to the local village. Then Rasika told them, that people are afraid of you here. You should go back into the forest. So they bowed down, and then they went back into the jungle. There's many other instances where he performed these mystical things. But he would declare that actually I'm not a mystic yogi. However, if Krishna desires, anything is possible. It's only by Krishna's mercy that these things happen. And of course, anyone who committed offenses to Rasika over his sojourn in his pastimes and travellings, they got incredible reactions. So actually there was one Mongol who actually attacked Rasika when he was on preaching, and he started beating him. Rasika caught hold of his hand and said, why are you hitting me? And that Mongol, he just fell down at Rasika's feet and he surrendered to him. But later, that Mongol, he got really bad karma. His 4 wives died. He lost his whole estate, all his riches. He fell violently ill. There was another king also, same thing. He caused some offense to Rasika, offended, and he lost his whole kingdom. There's so many other instances too, where people, they fell violently ill. So after some years had passed, Rasika's beloved guru, Shamananda, decided it was time for him to return to the spiritual world. And soon after, he fell very ill. And Rasika, his beloved disciple, was nursing him day and night. And it was during that time that Shamananda, Prabhu, he addressed his disciples and told them that I am placing you in the hand of Rasika. You should all obey his order. Anyone who doesn't obey his order is no longer a part of our group. So soon after, Shamananda left this mortal world and amidst a huge tumultuous kirtan, and returned to the spiritual world. And everyone just fell to the ground, weeping in separation. And it is said that at that time, the devotees, they could not pacify Rasika. Now, his love for his beloved Guru is said could melt stone. Therefore, it was said it was not possible to describe his grief. Tears were just incessantly just flowing from his eyes. So soon after, despite his grief in separation from Shamananda, Rasika organized this big 12-day festival. And he invited all members of Shamananda's Sampradaya were invited. And every day a huge feast was served, Krishna Gita, followed by ecstatic kirtan. And during this kirtan, it was seen, Rasika, he was just dancing and chanting ecstatically. He was just manifesting all the symptoms of love of God. His hair standing on end, quivering in his body, falling on the ground. Soon after this, Rasika and his companions, they traveled to Jaganath Puri to attend the annual Rath Yatra festival. And on the auspicious day of the Rath Yatra festival in Jaganath Puri, Jaganath, Baladev, Subhadra are mounting their chariots. However, what happened is when it was time to proceed, the chariots would not move. They couldn't move the chariots. Then Jaganath himself, he spoke to the head priest. He said, my favorite devotee, Rasika, is on his way here. Until he reaches here, my cart will not move. Tell this to the king. Meanwhile, the king was bringing in big elephants, trying to move the carts. And then they found out, Jaganath had revealed that, the cart, Jaganath was not moving. So when Asika finally arrived, he lovingly offered Jaganath beautiful gifts, fine jewelry, clothes, ornaments. And seeing Lord Jagannath's moon-like face, he was just floating in an ocean of love, shedding tears and manifesting all ecstatic symptoms. And soon a big kirtan started, and Rasika was dancing and chanting, just with such emotion for the pleasure of the Lord. Then on the request of the temple leader, Rasika was asked to come forward and pull the cart. So then on the request of what he did is Rasika came forward, he placed his head on the pillar of the chariot and he began to push. And then by the Lord's desire, the three carts started moving. Otherwise, they couldn't move the cart. So he remained in Jagannath Puri for 9 days, performing kirtan, discussing Krishna Katha, and everyone was just enthralled by his beautiful talks and his kirtans. Even the kings, all the Vaishnavas, sannyasis, brahmanas, he just by his words, he just caused them to just afloat in this love for Krishna. And while he was in Jagannath Puri, he was traveling around and he would worship the paths on which Lord Chaitanya traveled when he was in Jagannath Puri. And at certain spots, he would roll in the dust. At other spots, he would perform ecstatic chanting of the holy name. So Rasika, he knew nothing. He knew nothing but Krishna. He always tried to help others understand Krishna. Thus, he traveled just continuously to different places, encouraging people to give up their bad habits and develop their faith in Krishna. Then one day he was sitting alone and he began longing to see Krishna in his beautiful form, his threefold bending form, under the Kadamba tree, playing his flute on the banks of the Jamuna, being served by his confidential devotees. So he was just meditating on that, and in this way, he decided, actually, it's time for me to leave this world and return to that eternal abode of the Lord. So suddenly, Krishna actually appeared before him in his beautiful form. And Rasika was just overwhelmed with joy. Words cannot describe the joy he was experiencing. But Krishna told him, actually, it's time for you to leave this world now. It's time for you to return. However, when Rasika revealed this to his close associates, they were just shattered. They were just started deeply lamenting. They loved Rasika so much. Rasika, he expressed his gratitude, to all his disciples and followers for assisting him in his preaching mission. How they'd transformed the land of Utkala due to their preaching works. I was telling you in the beginning of the class about the land of Utkala. How people were so irreligious there and degraded. They were mistreating sadhus, brahmas, sannyasis, often killing them, robbing them. Also, all the kings and government ministers, members of the higher caste, extremely corrupt, performing sins beyond description. And even amongst the general mass of people, they would just kill each other for trifles of amounts of money. And if they saw kirtan leaders, they would just attack them and just push Vaishnavas out of their homes, drive them into the fire. It was such a terrible place. But by the preaching of Rasika and Shamananda, this whole land of Utkala had been transformed into Vaikuntha. Everyone was just now worshipping Krishna, chanting his holy name. So Rasika explained to all his disciples and followers, that I came here with this mission of delivering the people of Utkala, and now that mission is complete. Now it's time for me to go back to join Lord Chaitanya in the spiritual world. So when his dear companions, they fell to the ground, they were helplessly crying in anticipation of separation from him, although they understood it was Krishna's desire for Rasika to return. So after this, Rasika was just happily passing his days and nights with his disciples, blissfully enjoying chanting and dancing and kirtan and sankirtan. Yet internally, he was meditating on returning to Garuda Govinda, to the spiritual world. Then one day, by Krishna's divine arrangement, a small thorn just entered his foot, caused this terrible fever, which spread through his entire body. And he told his disciples, my time's come. It's time for me to return. And he told his disciples, you should carry me to Ramuna. For Lord Chaitanya has instructed me to be buried at Shira Chura Gopinath temple. That was a special deity, remember, that stole the sweet rice from Madhavendra Puri. That special deity. So he was carried to Ramuna. And then, all of a sudden, he just stood up. And he went alone into the temple of Shira Chura Gopinath. And he just started walking towards the deity. Then he suddenly just disappeared. Went back to Godhead. Jai Srila Rasikananda Prabhu ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. He's a very special eternal associate of Lord Chaitanya who came 56 years after Lord Chaitanya. And he delivered on a special mission, to deliver that whole land of Utkala. That's a special day of his disappearance. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Rasikananda Prabhu ki